But first, the powerful environmental lobby inside the Labor Party have turned their attention from energy emissions targets to now push the party to go harder and faster on emissions from agriculture. The group, which has already secured the support of 150 Labor branches, will put their new motion for land-based emissions reductions to the ALP's National Conference come August. The three-point plan calls for developing a land industry carbon plan, ending land clearing and deforestation, and reducing methane gases produced by agriculture. Joining me now to discuss this and more, Environment Editor at The Australian, Graham Lloyd. Graham, welcome. We've seen this sort of push on agriculture play out across Europe, even New Zealand, although there's a story there with New Zealand. But so far, our ag sector, they know it's looming, but they haven't been the main target of emissions reductions here. What would this plan from Labor, if it gets up, do to the sector?
Well, it's been a long-known fact, Peter, that once you set a target of carbon neutral by 2050 or whatever date, cutting emissions from the power sector will only get you so far. The other big items are transport and agriculture. What we're seeing now is really the fight to define how that is going to be rolled out and who the sort of beneficiaries and who the payers are going to be. This organisation within Labor, it's a very powerful grassroots lobby. It really set the renewables target that proved too difficult for Labor in 2019, but they got their way at the last federal election. They're really got some ideological plans as well, particularly centred around the forest industry that we saw in Victoria in the budget. They want an end to national forest logging. They want the government to invest in plantation timbers to replace it. So the big loser potentially could be the taxpayer.
And of course with logging, and I referenced at the top of the show, the plant that makes the reflex paper in Australia, the last sort of white paper available, well, that'll go in Victoria after the decision in the state budget yesterday, meaning every little bit of office paper you get in Australia will be imported. Timber's renewable. Why the madness on the timber industry?
Yeah, look, it's a great tragedy that I think on two fronts. One, that national forests have been chopped up to make paper on the one sense, and the other, the mismatch between where plantation timbers are, which represent about 80% of the industry, and where the infrastructure is to process them. So really there's a lot to be said for having a plan that gets those two things closer together. But certainly the way that it's done has a lot of potential risks.
Talk to me about this green hydrogen announcement between Australia and India, announced by the two PMs. What's it actually mean?
Well, there's a lot of hype around green hydrogen, isn't there? We saw Joe Biden and the Indian Prime Minister both keen to have agreements with Australia about this new technology. The thing is that it's something that everybody aspires to do. At this point in time, no one has actually been able to do it at scale and cost. So if you like, I think both the US and India want to participate. They are saying that they want Australia to be a partner in it. But in terms of detail, they really haven't worked out how it can be done.
I've got to ask you, Graham, I mean, if we're going to take a sledgehammer as we have to energy, we're doing it certainly with resources, coal and gas under threat, certainly not being used here, struggling to export them, and that's the next attack line. But also you're talking now about agriculture. We talk about timber as well. What's this do to our bottom line? I mean, how do we pay for something like the NDIS and our retirements if all of our expert earnings are basically banned because of environmental grounds?
Well, there's certainly a lot of peril in what's playing out in the resource sector at the moment, and agriculture is obviously one of the great industries that sustains rural populations and makes a very substantial contribution to the nation's wealth. The big danger for the agricultural sector is in the issue of land clearing and really the permitting and the regulation and the oversight that farms are going to have to comply with to meet sort of environmental ideals. There's a huge process underway with reform of the environmental laws that ultimately will put much greater imposts on land users. Unfortunately, all these things cost money, as you say, and at some point in time, you run out of other people's money, and really we should concentrate on things that improve efficiencies and maximise the return and do things even if it is in a different way.